The forgotten outpost commander Sarah Chon stood at the observation deck of the administrative center, watching the sunrise paint the rocky landscape of Kepler 442c in shades of amber and gold. The twin suns cast long shadows across the mining operations that stretched to the horizon, where massive excavators worked tirelessly to extract the rare tantalum deposits that made this remote world valuable to Earth's industrial complex. 30 years had passed since the first colonists arrived on this distant planet, 6 months' journey from the nearest human settlement. What began as a temporary mining operation had evolved into a permanent home for 12,000 souls who had chosen to build their lives on the edge of known space. Sarah had been among them for 8 years, first as a security consultant, and now as the colony's administrator, a role she never expected to hold. When she left her position in Earth's naval forces, the morning air carried the familiar sounds of the colony awakening. Children's laughter echoed from the residential districts as they prepared for school, while the steady hum of machinery indicated another day of mining operations beginning. Sarah's personal communicator chirped, interrupting her morning routine with an urgent message from the communications center. Zara al-Rashid's voice crackled through the device with barely contained excitement. "Commander, you need to get down here immediately. We're picking up something on the long-range sensors that shouldn't be there." Sarah made her way quickly through the colony's main corridors, past the hydroponics facilities where colonists grew fresh vegetables, beyond the workshops where Elena Vasquez's engineering teams maintained the aging equipment that kept their world functioning. The communications center occupied the lower level of the administrative building, its walls lined with monitoring equipment that connected Kepler 442c to the broader human network. Zara stood before the main sensor display, her dark eyes reflecting the amber light of multiple contacts appearing on the screen. The young communications specialist had arrived on the colony 5 years earlier as part of a technical exchange program from Mars, and had chosen to stay, finding purpose in maintaining the vital links between the colony and the outside galaxy. "What am I looking at?" Sarah asked, studying the display that showed 17 distinct objects moving in formation toward their system. "Unknown vessels, Commander. They're big, definitely not human design. The signatures don't match anything in our databases. They dropped out of hyperspace about 4 hours ago and have been maintaining steady approach vector toward Kepler 442c ever since." Sarah felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. In 30 years of operation, the colony had never encountered alien contact. Pirates occasionally threatened the shipping lanes, but those were human problems with human solutions. This was something entirely different. Dr. Marcus Webb arrived at the communications center as Sarah was processing the implications of the sensor readings. The colony's chief medical officer had spent the early morning hours in the medical facility, conducting his weekly rounds among the miners who worked the deepest shafts where the most valuable deposits lay hidden. His weathered face showed concern as he examined the sensor data. "How long until they reach us?" Marcus asked, his medical training making him think immediately of evacuation procedures and casualty protocols. Zara performed quick calculations on her workstation. At their current speed, approximately 18 hours. "They're not trying to hide their approach, Commander. If anything, they seem to want us to know they're coming." Elena Vasquez entered the communications center with the confident stride of someone who had spent 15 years managing the complex operations that kept the colony profitable. Her engineering expertise extended far beyond mining equipment, encompassing everything from life support systems to the basic infrastructure that made human life possible on Kepler 442c. "I've been monitoring the industrial networks," Elena reported. "Our defensive capabilities are minimal. We have security teams trained for crowd control and minor disputes, not military engagement. The orbital platforms are designed for asteroid deflection, not ship-to-ship combat. Captain Tom Bradley, the head of colony security, joined the impromptu crisis meeting. His 50-person security force was trained to handle civilian disputes, equipment theft, and the occasional wild animal that wandered too close to the residential areas. They were not soldiers, despite Tom's own military background from his service in Earth's colonial marines 20 years earlier. "We need to contact Earth immediately," Tom said, his tactical mindset already working through their limited options. "Request immediate military support." Sarah nodded to Zara, who began composing an emergency transmission to Earth's colonial administration. The message would take weeks to reach its destination, and any response would take equally long to return. Even if Earth responded immediately with military vessels, help was months away. The alien fleet continued its steady approach throughout the day, while the colony's leadership worked frantically to prepare for contact. Sarah called an emergency meeting of the Colonial Council, briefing the civilian leadership on their situation, while carefully avoiding panic among the general population. The council chamber filled with worried faces, as representatives from each district learned about the approaching aliens. These were people who had chosen to build their lives far from Earth's protection, accepting the risks of frontier existence in exchange for freedom and opportunity. They were miners, engineers, teachers, farmers, and shopkeepers who had created a functioning society from nothing but determination and hard work. "We should consider evacuation," suggested Maria Santos, the representative from the agricultural district. "If we begin immediate preparations, we might be able to get the children and elderly to the transport ships." Elena shook her head. "Our transport capacity can handle maybe 2,000 people, and that's if we pack them dangerously tight. Where would we take them? The nearest human settlement is months away, and we don't have supplies for that kind of journey." Dr. Webb raised another concern. "Even if we could evacuate everyone, we're abandoning 30 years of work. This colony represents billions of credits in infrastructure and decades of human effort. More importantly, it's home to 12,000 people who have nowhere else to go." The debate continued for hours while the alien fleet drew closer. Some colonists advocated for immediate surrender, hoping that peaceful cooperation might preserve lives. Others argued for resistance, believing that humanity's presence in this sector of space was worth defending regardless of the cost. As evening approached, the alien fleet finally made contact. The communication came through all frequencies, simultaneously, demonstrating technology far beyond human capabilities. The voice that emerged from the speakers was translated into perfect English, though the mechanical precision suggested artificial intelligence rather than biological speech. "Human settlement of Kepler 442c. This is Commander Zethkar of the Vorthik Empire. Your species has established unauthorized presence in territory claimed by the Vorthik Dominion. You will evacuate this world within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in the seizure of your settlement and the removal of your population." Sarah responded immediately, her naval training helping her maintain composure despite the circumstances. "Commander Zethkar, this is Commander Sarah Chun of the Kepler 442c colony. This world was claimed and settled by humanity 30 years ago. We have established homes, families, and lives here. We request peaceful dialogue to resolve this territorial dispute." The response came without hesitation. "Human Commander Chun, the Vorthik Empire recognizes no human territorial claims beyond your home system. This world contains resources required for Vorthik expansion. Your presence is temporary and will be terminated. You have 47 hours to evacuate." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the colony in stunned silence. Sarah looked around the council chamber at faces that reflected determination mixed with fear. These people had already made one journey to the edge of space to build something meaningful. They were not the type to surrender easily. Elena spoke first, her voice steady despite the impossible circumstances. Commander, I've been thinking about our defensive options. We may not have military weapons, but we have something the aliens might not expect. What's that? Sarah asked. We have 30 years of mining infrastructure, industrial equipment designed to move mountains, and the most extensive tunnel system in human space. We also have something else that might be valuable. Elena activated the main display, showing a three-dimensional representation of the colony's underground networks. The tunnels extended for hundreds of kilometers beneath the surface, connecting mining sites, storage facilities, and emergency shelters that could house the entire population. We know this world better than anyone, Elena continued. We've explored every cave, mapped every tunnel, cataloged every geological formation. If these aliens want to take our home, they're going to have to come down here and get it. Dr. Webb studied the tunnel schematics with growing interest. The underground facilities could provide protection from orbital bombardment. If we can force them to fight on the surface and in the tunnels, we might be able to level the playing field. Captain Bradley nodded slowly. It's not a conventional military strategy, but it might work. We can use the mining equipment as weapons, the tunnels as cover, and our knowledge of the terrain as an advantage. Sarah felt something shifting in the room, a sense of resolve replacing the initial fear and uncertainty. These colonists had already proven their ability to thrive in hostile conditions, to build something meaningful from nothing but determination and hard work. Perhaps they could find a way to defend it as well. All right, Sarah said, her decision crystallizing as she spoke. We're not abandoning our home. We're going to fight for it. Elena, I want you to start preparing the mining equipment for defensive use. Tom, begin training civilian volunteers in basic combat techniques. Marcus, set up medical stations in the deepest tunnels. Zara, monitor alien communications and prepare our networks for disruption. The meeting adjourned with colonists, hurrying to their assigned tasks, transforming their peaceful mining settlement into a fortress. Throughout the night, the sounds of preparation echoed through the tunnels as ordinary citizens prepared for extraordinary circumstances. As the alien fleet entered orbit around Kepler 442c, Sarah stood once again at the observation deck, watching. Her people work with the same determination that had built their colony from nothing. Tomorrow would bring battle against impossible odds, but tonight they were still free humans defending their chosen home. The 48-hour countdown had begun, but the colonists of Kepler 442c were no longer simply waiting for evacuation or surrender. They were preparing to show the galaxy that humanity's weakest outpost might also be its most dangerous. The unexpected resistance the Vorthic landing craft descended through Kepler 442c's atmosphere like crystalline spears. There, faceted hulls reflecting the twin suns' light as they approached the colony's main settlement. Commander Zethkar observed the human habitation from his flagship's bridge, noting the primitive architecture and outdated technology that characterized this remote outpost. The Vorthic were an ancient species that had expanded across 17 star systems, incorporating dozens of worlds into their crystalline empire. Their society was built on efficiency and order, with each conquest following predictable patterns of overwhelming force, followed by rapid integration. They had encountered humans before in border skirmishes, finding them to be a young species, with adequate technology, but lacking the discipline necessary for serious military resistance. Zethkar's tactical analysis indicated that Kepler 442c should fall within hours. The human settlement showed no significant military installations, no orbital defenses worth mentioning, and no indication of serious resistance capability. The 12,000 colonists would likely surrender once they witnessed Vorthic military superiority, allowing for efficient processing and relocation it designated human territories. The first landing craft touched down in the colony's main plaza, their crystalline forms unfolding to reveal Vorthic warriors in powered exoskeletons. Each warrior stood 3 meters tall, their natural crystalline carapaces enhanced with energy weapons and defensive systems that could withstand most human military equipment. They had conquered heavily defended military installations with similar forces. Commander Sarah Chun watched the landing from the administrative center's reinforced observation post, coordinating the colony's response through encrypted communications with their distributed command structure. The past 48 hours had transformed the mining settlement into something resembling a military installation, though one built from industrial equipment and civilian determination rather than proper military hardware. Elena Vasquez had worked miracles with the mining equipment, converting excavators into mobile artillery platforms and repurposing industrial explosives for defensive use. The massive fusion-powered excavators that normally stripped away mountains to reach tantalum deposits had been fitted with improvised armor and weapon systems, creating formidable defensive platforms that could operate both on the surface and in the extensive tunnel networks. The Vorthic advance began with textbook precision, their warriors moving in coordinated formations toward the administrative center and primary infrastructure targets. Their energy weapons easily penetrated the makeshift barricades that the colonists had constructed, and their tactical doctrine called for rapid seizure of command and control facilities. They were not prepared for Elena's first surprise. The mining charges detonated simultaneously beneath 3 Vorthic formations, collapsing carefully prepared sections of the surface into the tunnel networks below. Elena had spent decades learning to move massive quantities of rock and earth with precisely calculated explosions, and she applied that expertise to moving Vorthic warriors into carefully prepared kill zones. The aliens found themselves separated and disoriented as the ground beneath their feet gave way, dropping them into tunnel networks where their height and formation advantages became liabilities. The colonists had spent 2 days preparing these underground battlefields, positioning mining equipment and improvised weapons at strategic choke points. Captain Tom Bradley led the first underground engagement, using his security team's knowledge of the tunnel layouts to coordinate ambush attacks against confused Vorthic warriors. The aliens' energy weapons were devastating in open combat, but the narrow tunnels and irregular terrain neutralized many of their tactical advantages. More importantly, the colonists were fighting for their homes, their families, and their right to exist as free humans. Every miner who joined the resistance brought decades of experience working in dangerous underground conditions, knowledge of explosives and heavy machinery, and the physical conditioning that came from years of hard labor in challenging environments. Dr. Marcus Webb had established medical stations throughout the tunnel networks, but his most important contribution came from his analysis of Vorthic physiology. The alien warriors who had fallen in the initial engagements provided crucial intelligence about their species' biological vulnerabilities. Their crystalline structure is incredibly strong, Marcus reported to Sarah through the secure communication network, but it's also brittle under specific stress conditions. The frequency resonance from our industrial equipment seems to cause structural instability in their exoskeletons. Elena immediately began modifying the mining equipment to exploit this weakness, tuning the massive excavator's drilling systems to generate the specific frequency combinations that could shatter Vorthic armor. What had begun as desperate improvisation was evolving into sophisticated warfare adapted to their unique circumstances. The battle raged for 18 hours as Vorthic forces found themselves engaged in a type of combat they had never encountered. Their previous conquests had involved conventional military engagements with predictable tactics and equipment. The humans of Kepler 442c were fighting with mining equipment, industrial explosives, and infrastructure systems turned into weapons. Zara al-Rashid provided the next crucial breakthrough when she successfully infiltrated the Vorthak communication networks. Her years of experience maintaining complex technical systems across the colony had given her insights into alien technology that surprised even herself. I'm reading their tactical frequencies, Zara reported from her improvised electronic warfare station deep in the tunnel networks. Their coordination depends on constant communication between units. If I can disrupt that, their formations will fall apart. The communications disruption came at the moment when Elena's modified excavators launched their coordinated assault on the main Vorthak landing site. The massive machines emerged from hidden tunnel entrances like metallic monsters, their drilling systems generating the frequency combinations that shattered alien armor while their improvised weapons systems targeted confused enemy formations. Commander. Zethkar watched his tactical display with growing disbelief as his forces were systematically destroyed by equipment designed for mining operations. The humans were using their industrial infrastructure as a weapon system, turning their entire colony into a fortress that adapted and responded to Vorthak tactics. The turning point came when Sarah led a coordinated assault on the Vorthak command post, using the colony's knowledge of local terrain to approach from an unexpected direction. The aliens had established their headquarters in what they believed was secure territory, but the colonists' tunnel networks extended far beyond the settlement's visible boundaries. The attack emerged from underground passages that the Vorthak had not detected, with mining equipment and colonist fighters appearing simultaneously from multiple directions. Sarah's tactical coordination combined Elena's engineering expertise, Tom's security knowledge, Marcus's medical insights, and Zara's technical capabilities into a unified assault that overwhelmed the alien command structure. Commander Zethkar found himself facing human opponents who fought with a combination of desperation and expertise that he had never encountered. These were not professional soldiers following military doctrine, but ordinary citizens defending their homes with whatever tools they could find. Their weapons were improvised, their tactics unconventional, but their determination was absolute. The final battle took place in the colony's main mining facility, where Elena had prepared the ultimate demonstration of human engineering capability. The massive fusion-powered systems that normally processed millions of tons of raw ore had been converted into a weapon that could reshape the battlefield itself. As Vorthak reinforcements attempted to establish a secure landing zone, Elena triggered a carefully orchestrated sequence that caused a controlled collapse of the entire mining complex. The aliens found themselves trapped in a maze of twisted metal and collapsed tunnels, facing opponents who knew every passage and had prepared every ambush point. The casualties were devastating for both sides, but the psychological impact on the Vorthak was profound. They had expected easy victory over a primitive human outpost, and instead found themselves engaged in brutal warfare against opponents who refused to surrender despite impossible odds. Commander Zethkar made the decision to withdraw his forces. After 36 hours of continuous combat, the Vorthak had lost over 40% of their landing force, with most of their heavy equipment destroyed or abandoned. More troubling was the realization that the humans had been learning and adapting throughout the battle, turning each engagement into a lesson that improved their effectiveness. The alien fleet departed Kepler 442c's orbit after broadcasting its final message to the colony. Commander Zethkar's words carried a grudging respect that had been absent from his initial ultimatum. Human Commander Chun, the Vorthak acknowledge your species' capability for warfare. Your settlement will remain unmolested. The Dominion will reconsider our territorial claims in this sector. Sarah stood in the ruins of the administrative center, surrounded by exhausted colonists who had proven that humanity's determination could overcome superior technology and overwhelming odds. The battle had cost them dearly, with over 800 casualties and massive infrastructure damage. But they had retained their freedom, and their home. Dr. Webb worked tirelessly too. Treat the wounded, using medical supplies and equipment that had survived the battle. Elena coordinated repair efforts, applying the same engineering expertise that had won the war to rebuilding their damaged colony. Tom organized security patrols to ensure that departing Vorthic forces were actually leaving the system. Zara transmitted the complete battle records to Earth and every human settlement within communication range, ensuring that the galaxy would know what had happened at Kepler 442c, the story of the mining colony that had defeated an alien empire with industrial equipment and civilian determination spread throughout human space, inspiring other frontier settlements and serving notice to potential aggressors that humanity's weakest outposts might be its most dangerous. The colonists of Kepler 442c had learned something important about themselves during those desperate hours underground. They were not just miners and engineers and doctors trying to make a living on the edge of space. They were humans, with all the stubborn determination and creative problem-solving that the species was known for throughout the galaxy. As the twin suns set over the damaged but undefeated colony, Sarah Chun smiled at the knowledge that they had not just survived their first alien contact, but had turned it into a victory that would be remembered across human space for generations to come. The galaxy had learned not to underestimate humanity's forgotten outposts, and the colonists had learned that home was worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Asterisk.